They gave me 7 days. That's what the letter said. Plain, bold letters at the top. Final notice. Compliance required within 1 week. I stood there on my porch, boots still dusty from the field, holding this paper like it was some kind of joke. The Homeowners Association, or HOA, had decided that my ranch, the land I've lived on for over 15 years, was in violation of their rules. And if I didn't fix it fast, they'd start the process to seize and sell it. Now, here's the kicker. They didn't even know who they were messing with. See, what they didn't realize is that while they were trying to bully me off my ranch, I actually own the very land their fancy subdivision is built on. That's right. The roads, the sidewalks, even their little dog park, all of it sits on acreage I've quietly held the deed to for years. It all started when a few new board members moved in and decided to clean things up. Suddenly I was getting notices about fence height, tractor noise, and even the way my barn looked from the road. I tried to talk to them, friendly at first, but they weren't having it. They saw my ranch as an eyesore, something that didn't fit with their golf carts and manicured lawns. So I decided to keep quiet. Let them dig their hole. I kept the papers tucked away, the ones showing the boundaries and ownership lines. And when they finally pushed too far, threatening to take what was mine, well, that's when I decided to push back. What happened next? Let's just say the board meeting that followed didn't quite go as planned, but I'll save that for the next part. You won't want to miss how they reacted when the truth finally came out. A few days before that meeting, I sat at my kitchen table, spreading out the old maps and documents I'd kept tucked away in a weathered file box. My grandfather handed me that land back when I was barely old enough to drive a truck. Over the years, I added to it, parcel by parcel, until it stretched farther than most folks realized. Back then, this place was just wide open space. No gates, no rules, no HOA. But times changed. Developers came in, bought up nearby lots, and started building rows of cookie-cutter homes. And somehow, without my say, a neighborhood started growing right along my property line. At first, I didn't mind. New neighbors meant fresh faces, kids riding bikes, the smell of backyard barbecues. I kept to myself, worked the land, waved when folks passed by. But the HOA came later, when a few residents decided they wanted to protect property values. That's when the letters started. First, it was a warning about my non-compliant fencing, then about the unauthorized structures, my barn and workshop that have been standing since before most of them even lived in the state. Thing is, they never looked into the land deeds. They assumed their HOA rules applied to everything in sight. They didn't realize the roads they drive on, the storm drains they complain about, and even that little community garden. It's all sitting on a lease agreement with my name at the top. But I didn't come here to start a war. I just wanted to be left alone. Still, when someone threatens to take your home, a place built with sweat, family, and history, something changes in you. So I sat through that board meeting, quiet at first, waiting for the right moment. And when it came, I dropped the paperwork right on the table. Their faces? You'll want to see that part. The moment I slid those papers across the table, the room went quiet. You could hear the ticking of the wall clock over in the corner. At first, they just stared, like maybe I was bluffing. But then Mr. Caldwell, the HOA president, leaned in and started reading. His eyebrows tightened with each page he turned. The same guy who just 5 minutes earlier was lecturing me about property codes and community guidelines suddenly wasn't so loud. But here's where it got interesting. See, the HOA board wasn't made up of just neighbors anymore. A real estate guy had joined last fall, Scott something, and he had big plans. Rumors were flying around that they wanted to rezone the edge of the neighborhood to bring in more modern homes, which just happened to border my land. That's when the complaints about my ranch really picked up. I started to wonder if this was more than just picky rule enforcement. Maybe they saw dollar signs where I saw home. And then there's Claire, one of the newer residents, who reached out to me quietly after one of the board meetings. She said she overheard a few things. Things about pushing me out, maybe forcing. A sale through fines and penalties. She didn't agree with it, but she felt stuck. They act like they own everything, she told me, but they don't even know the history of this place. As I watched the board shuffle papers and whisper to one another, I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a power play. They thought I was some old rancher with no clue about land rights or legal documents. But what they didn't count on was that I've been here longer than their blueprints, and I've got every survey, deed, and signature to prove it. Still, I said nothing. I wanted to see what move they'd try next. And let me tell you, they didn't disappoint. After that board meeting, things got real quiet, but not in a good way. No more letters showed up in my mailbox, no calls, not even a neighbor's wave. It felt like the whole neighborhood had turned their backs overnight. I'd go to town and catch a few of them glancing my way, whispering, like I was some kind of villain in their story. But I wasn't the one trying to take something that didn't belong to me. Then came the survey stakes. About a week later, I noticed a few orange flags in the ground near the far edge of my property. At first, I thought maybe the county was doing routine work. But then I saw the truck parked off the road, a private surveying company hired by the HOA. They were measuring land they didn't own, marking lines like they were drawing up plans. That's when I knew. They weren't backing down. They were just getting started. I kept my distance. Let them think I wasn't paying attention. But every move they made, I documented. I took photos, videos, logged dates, and names. They were crossing onto private land, my land, without permission. And yet the arrogance on their faces told me they believed they had the upper hand. Then Claire stopped by again, late one evening, said she overheard something else. Scott had contacted a builder. They were trying to fast-track a rezoning plan at the next city council meeting. They thought if they could prove my ranch was abandoned-looking or unmaintained, they could label it as blight and argue for redevelopment. My blood boiled hearing that, but I wasn't about to lose everything my family built over some backdoor deal and a few slick-talking developers. I had proof, I had leverage, and I had history on my side. The next meeting was days away, and they had no idea what was coming. The night before the city council meeting, I was going over my documents one last time when I got a call that stopped me cold. It was from a friend who works over at the county clerk's office. She sounded uneasy, said she thought I should come take a look at something. So I drove down there first thing the next morning, heart pounding the whole way. What she showed me made my stomach turn. There was a newly filed document, a claim suggesting that part of my land had unclear ownership. It was full of legal jargon, but the intent was clear. Someone was trying to cast doubt on my deed. The signature on the filing? Scott's name, along with a lawyer tied to the development company that had recently started sponsoring local events in the neighborhood. They were moving fast, trying to shift the story from a land dispute to a legal mess. If they could create just enough confusion, they might delay any decision long enough to push through their rezoning plan. It wasn't just about my ranch anymore. This was about control. They wanted the land, the access, and the power that came with it. If they pulled this off, not only would I lose part of my property, but the entire HOA would gain leverage to rewrite the rules. Maybe even start pushing other longtime landowners out too. I left that office furious, but more focused than ever. I wasn't going to let a paper trail of lies take what generations before me had worked for. The meeting was just hours away now. I had the original deeds, aerial photos from before the neighborhood even existed, and a surprise witness who knew more about the history of the land than anyone else still alive. But just when I thought I had everything ready, another curveball hit, one I never saw coming, and it changed everything. The city council meeting room was packed, Every seat was filled, people standing along the back walls, murmuring and shifting in their chairs. The HOA board sat in the front row, stone-faced. Scott had a folder in his lap, full of papers he clearly thought would win the day. I walked in slow, boots heavy on the floor, holding the old leather case with everything I needed. I wasn't just fighting for my land. I was fighting for every person who's ever been pushed around by people who think money and influence matter more than history and truth. When my name was called, I stood at the podium and laid it all out. The original deed signed by my grandfather, the boundary surveys, the lease agreements showing the HOA's entire infrastructure sat on my land. I even had satellite images showing the ranch long before a single sidewalk was poured. Then I introduced my surprise witness, old Mr. Duncan, who'd been the county's land assessor for over 30 years. He verified every document, even pulled his own copies from storage. That room went silent again, just like in the HOA meeting. But this time the silence was heavier, like the air had changed. Scott tried to speak, tried to suggest my P. After that night, things around the neighborhood shifted. Some folks avoided me completely, but a few came around. Claire stopped by again, this time with a plate of cookies and a quiet, "Thank you." Turns out more residents had doubts about the HOA than I realized. They just didn't know how to speak up. My story gave them a reason to start asking questions. A few even began organizing to elect a new board. People who actually respected the land and the folks who'd been here long before the sidewalks and street signs. I spent the next couple weeks reinforcing the property lines, not just with fences, but with fresh signs and updated records at the county office. I wasn't taking any more chances. The development company may have been knocked back for now, but I knew they'd return. So I got ahead of it. Lawyers, land use experts, and even a local historian who helped document just how far back my family's roots go in this town. The ranch stayed mine. Not because I fought harder, but because I had the truth. And I didn't back down when it counted. That old barn, the fields, even the dusty road leading to my gate, they're more than land. They're memory. They're home. And if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Just because someone wears a suit and speaks with confidence doesn't mean they know what they're doing, or that they're right. Sometimes the strongest voice is the quiet one that stands its ground. So yeah, the HOA gave me a week to comply. But they didn't know the ground they were standing on didn't even belong to them. And now they do.